Hi there, I'm Chad Troftgruben. This video is part of a larger course on rigging and animating characters in Adobe Character Animator. Use the playlist to navigate the sections as they're uploaded. This course was recorded in 2018 and originally ran on Udemy, where it received strong reviews. I'm archiving it here because the material is still useful. If you want the course files, check the link below. You'll also find a link to the updated version with more current information. Thank you for watching, and I hope you learned something. For this video, I am inside of Character Animator, and I'm looking at the Start tab. When you open up Character Animator for the first time, chances are you'll end up here. And it's a good place to start if you are new, and if you're looking for more help. Let's say you're working with my course and you want just a little bit more. You can come down here and look at these template puppets. You can follow the directions on these, replace your items, and then you can have a working puppet in no time. But hopefully what I show you here will also help when you create your first puppet. The thing we want to do is come over and click on the New Project button. This will allow us to create a new project, and I'm going to add this project to my tutorials. So I'll come down here, just find my Udemy folder, go into my exercise files, and we're just going to name this one 06 Chad Character Animator. And then I will hit enter. Once the file is saved, you'll be brought to the record panel. Now, the record panel is where you animate. And so it's kind of weird that it brings you here immediately since we don't really have anything to animate with. So we're going to forget about the record panel for right now and simply jump over to the rig tab. Here is where we can set up the rig. We can bring in our Photoshop document, start tagging, adding handles and behaviors, and whatever else we want to do before we jump to animation. When you're on the Rig tab, you have access to a few different panels. The Project panel, Triggers and History, the Puppet panel, and then the Properties. You'll first want to start with the Project panel because we need to bring something in to work with. Use Command-I or Control-I if you're on Windows to import. And I'm just going to jump over here to my exercise files, and we're going to locate 05 chadready.psd. That's the file we created in the previous section, and we can go ahead and click import. This can take a moment, but once it imports, you'll see we have the name of the file on the project panel, and it has a puppet icon next to it indicating that this is a rig. You'll see now, once we click on this item, we get access to the Properties panel. It shows us the puppet location. So if we click on this, it'll bring up the PSD file, and then we could go in and make alterations if we wish. We could also change the source of the file. Let's say you update the file and you want this file separate from the other. You can click on this and relocate that new source file. Now, if you plan to work with the same file throughout, you can turn on auto-sync with artwork, which will allow you to make changes in Photoshop or Illustrator, and then those will update in real time once you save those documents. So you can work seamlessly between Photoshop, Illustrator, and Character Animator, having them both work together so you can create the perfect rig. And then you have your puppet mesh, which allows you to view the mesh shape and change the shape as well as adjust the expansion, and we'll get more into that as we continue. And then on the bottom, you have behaviors. Once again, we'll get into that in a separate section. So to do anything with this puppet, you'll need to double click on it. So double click, and it's going to bring up the puppet then on the interface. Here, if we move to the puppet panel, you'll find that we have our layers just like they were inside of Photoshop. The only difference is there's no plus sign next to the names that we assigned. That's because the plus sign is now the crown. And you can see we have a crown on Chad because we added a plus sign to Chad in Photoshop. And if we come into the head, you'll see that the eyebrows and the eyes are also independent. So we can go through and click on any of these layers, and it's going to give you different properties. So the Chad main group layer won't give you much else except for some transformation layer properties. You'll see right here. And you can come in and adjust the location as well as the size, rotation, opacity, and even the blend mode of the rig. So this works again based on the layer that you have selected. Let's click on the head, and let's say for whatever reason you decide that you want the head to be bigger. You could go back to Photoshop and enlarge the head, or you could come here and just quickly enter in the values that you want, change the size of the head to whatever you want, and then you could then grab it and move it around, reposition it, get it where you need it to be. And it's cool that you can go through that process and rearrange outside of Photoshop. So really, you do have options when it comes to making those changes. I'm just going to go ahead and use Command Z to undo until I get back to the original position. We also have some independent options right down here, and we'll cover that as we continue. Again, we talked about independence with the crowns and the plus signs, and that will all soon make sense as we start to touch more on that. And then when you select a layer, depending on the layer you have selected, you can come down here to the tags, and this allows you to assign your different body parts. So for your eyes, your blinks, your eyebrows, your face, your mouth, and we can even assign the head turns and the mouth poses or the visemes right down here, in addition to any body movements for like a walk cycle. And then we have physics and modifiers for our handles, and then we have our triggers and behaviors below. So again, there is a lot here. Hopefully you're not too overwhelmed yet. We are going to break this down piece by piece. Just know that this is how the rig panel works, and all the information for the rig you need is here. One final note, you'll find your tools on the bottom. So here we have the preview of the rig, of course, but on the bottom you have your selection tool, your hand tool, your zoom tool, and then all the handle tools you'll need to modify your puppet. And when it comes to your layers, you have a bird's eye view of how many handles, behaviors, and triggers are assigned to each layer. And again, all that will make more sense as we continue. But that is a basic overview of the rig panel. Hopefully by going over this video, it'll help you when it comes to navigating the interface as we start to build this puppet. For this video, I'm working off of 07 Chad Character Animator. Feel free to open up this document if you wish to view the result. I now want to jump over to the Record tab and just briefly show you what that is all about. And again, we will go over all of this in more detail, but I think it's important you understand the basics before you dive in. So once you rig, you can go over to Record, which is essentially the animation phase. Here, you'll have access still to the project panel, as well as your history, the timeline, any controls you set up, and then the properties, and then a camera and microphone. Because with Character Animator, you can control your characters with your face and voice. Right now, you're not seeing anything. The whole thing is blank. And that's because we need to create a scene. Once you finish your puppet, or at least once you get to the point where you want to test it out or try out different features and record, just come over here and click once on your puppet, and then come down and click on Add to New Scene. This will create a new scene and place your puppet inside. And this can take a moment depending on how complex things are. So once you have it in, you'll see we have access to more options. So once again, now looking at the project panel, we have a scene in addition to a puppet, and you can tell the difference between the icons and of course the labels. But also we have a timeline, and we have our puppet on the timeline, which means we can add multiple items to the timeline. And once we start to animate out, we can drop this down and gain access to all the subcategories of animation. So we can control the eye gaze, the head positions, the phonemes. All that can be broken down after the fact, and that will be on the timeline. Any controls you set up will be accessed here, so you can control the puppet in real time as we animate on the timeline if you wish. And in the middle, you have your scene panel, which of course previews what's going on. And then you have your timeline controls. So you can play what you've done so far, which we have no animation. You can stop it, you can go back one frame, and you can also rewind to start. You can change the playback speed, and hitting record will record any animation that you plan to do with your camera or your voice or whatever you do with the controls. And then up here, we have our camera and microphone. You can turn this on or off at any time. And I know I touched on this a little bit in the intro, but once again, just turn on your camera and you can see it works right there. My camera's a little bit lower, so I have my monitor up here, so I might be looking up here more. But as you can see, as I'm doing all this, that the puppet's already starting to move. Now, it's not perfect. We already have a glitch with the eye. That's probably due to how I named some things. We also have just some other things, not working quite how we probably want. And that's completely normal. When you get a puppet in, it's not going to work right away. And you can also turn on your voice, which if you have any phonemes mapped, it should pick up your voice and then the character should talk. But again, we need to get to that point. So I'm just going to turn those things off for now. And on the bottom here, you have access to your scene properties. So if we click on the puppet, you'll see we get access to the behaviors for that puppet. Again, we'll talk about that. But if you click off, so that there's nothing selected, you get access to the scene itself. So here you can go in and enter in your values that you want for this project. And I'm just going to do this right now. I'll come in here and enter 1920 by 1080. I'm just going to make this a 1920 by 1080 production so that it's an HD quality video. You can also increase or decrease the duration, and I'm not sure how long this is going to be yet. It will also automatically update as we add different audio and stuff that can track that. And we can change the frame rate as well. But in this case, I'm just going to leave it at 24. So now, when it comes to the rig itself, we could click on this, or come down here and click on the puppet on the timeline rather, and then come over here and you'll see we have our scale under transform. I'm just going to bring the scale down so that it fits within the 1080p composition. So that way, as we continue to work, nothing will be cut off. And you can also resize, as I showed you in the rig panel, and you can do more specific layer transformations that way. Here, we're only controlling the main rig, and it's only being affected during the animation. So there you go. That's a little bit about the record panel. That way you can navigate it a little bit easier. We'll pause here, and up next, we're going to jump back and start building our rig. For this video, I'm working off of 08 CAD Character Animator. Feel free to open up this file if you wish to see the final result. We now need to go in and start tagging the rig. And this essentially means we need to pick out the layers and the pieces of those layers and assign them to certain behaviors within Character Animator. You can automatically do this while designing your rig by renaming your layers certain names. And we already started that process in the previous part. As an example, we have a group called Head. If I come up here and click on Head, we're going to bring up the properties. And if we come down here to tags, you'll see we have that diagram of the face. And notice how the outline of the face is in blue. That's because we have the head selected. And because we named it Head, Character Animator knows to take this layer and assign it to the head. The same goes for your eyebrows. You can see it's highlighting the eyebrow here, and then the left eyebrow, your right eye, and then your left eye. The only problem though is when I set this up, I did it differently than how Character Animator likes to track it. You see, I put right eyebrow as the eyebrow that we're seeing it. It's on the right side of the screen. But Character Animator thinks of right eyebrow as the character's right eyebrow. So I could go in and just adjust this. I could click on this eyebrow instead, and then just deselect the other eyebrow. Now your labeling will be a little bit different. You'll see here that it says left eyebrow, when in fact it's the right eyebrow. And you can go in here and right click on this layer and rename it then to left eyebrow. And when you do that, you'll see that, let me just grab this and move it over. It's showing the original layer name right next to it. So when you change the name in Character Animator, you're mostly doing it for your own reference. And that's okay. So I'm just going to do that really quick so that way it's not too confusing. I'm just going to rename this one then to right eyebrow. And then we'll do left eye, right eye. And then right eye. There we are. And again, it's a small thing. You don't have to go through the process of renaming it that far, but I think it'll help. So now we come back here and we look at his left eyebrow, and it's masked to the left eyebrow on the face. We go to his right eyebrow, and we want to make sure that it is linked to the right eyebrow, so we can just click on it to do so, and then click on the other eyebrow to deselect that. Then you have your left eye. Come down here, and we're just going to reassign it to his right eye so that it matches the face, and then just click off that other eye right there. Make sure we click off the face. We don't want that. And then for the right eye, you can see it's right there. So we're just going to come in and click on that right eye to highlight it. Make sure we click on it. It sort of highlights when you go over it. So that's an indicator if you're clicking on it or not. There you go. So now you have those assigned. But when it comes to sublayers, you're going to have to make sure that everything is assigned as well. So the eyebrows should be okay. We have those assigned as angry, worried, and neutral, and Character Animator is going to know what to do with that. So what we can do here is move over to left eye, and if we click on right blink, you'll see that it's assigning it to that blink right there. I'm just going to come in and make sure it's on the eye we want it, and then just deselect that. Go to the pupil. Again, we're just going to swap that side really quick since I renamed these wrong. And then we have the right eyeball, which the eyeball is indicated by this line on the outside. So you're just going to come in and click on that outline on the other side, just so we got it assigned properly. And then we can click off that side. So now we're just going to go to the right eye and repeat those steps. But there is going to be a catch here, because I didn't name this last layer properly. In fact, I didn't name right blink properly either. It should be left blink. But because we went through and rearranged our eyes, that blink is actually associated correctly. And then you have the left pupil, which should actually be the right pupil. Just come in and reassign that. And then your left eye, it should be this. That should be the eyeball. And then this should be the eye. So the right eye is indicated by the circle, and then the left eyeball is indicated by that line. And you'll see that I accidentally named it left eye instead of eyeball, which is why it was grabbing the eye outline. But you want the eyeballs to be tracked by that meter next to each eye. So then, with that, we can close those up. The hair is fine because it's its own thing. We can assign that separately. And then you go to the mouths. And first, let's click on mouths. We want to make sure that the mouths group layer is assigned to the mouth itself. So we'll click on mouth. That way it's now assembled. Then we can come down to the mouth phonemes and start applying these. So it's just a matter of starting with the bottom here. We'll start with rest. And you just want to match the mouth pose with what you see here. Now, once again, had we gone through and renamed all these, how they're displayed here So if I put rest as neutral, it'll automatically tag it so you don't have to go through this process. But we're just going to put in neutral. We can also put in smile, and then we will also put in M because all those match that pose. So now we can just hide that and go to the next one, which is etc or etc. And that's showing the teeth. So we just want to put that on D and S. We can hide that and move up to E and see what it looks like, and then just match the poses. So this one's going to be E. And given how we have everything named, I'm just going to come in and put it to R as well as Now I could go back through and design different mouth poses for these, but for the sake of the tutorial and just to show you you can combine more than one, we're just going to go this route. Now we go to AI, and that's just a wider mouth, so we'll put in ah for that, and we should be good there. Move over here to L and TH, and we should only need to apply L for that. And then over to O. Once again, we'll put in O for this. And we can also put in surprised, since that's close. And then you have QUW. Just come in and apply it to WOO. And then the FV pose. Come in here and just assign it to F. Now we have a couple more here that my artist added in. We have frown, and then we have grin. And if we look at these, we can see what they look like. Now, with grin, maybe I will assign that to smile. Thinking about it now. And then just come down to rest, and then deselect smile on rest. And for frown, we're just going to leave that off. Since we don't really have a use for it, we're just not going to assign it, and it will never appear for us then. So now, with the rig properly tagged, at least for the face, you'll find if you go to record that it's going to react differently than it was before. So let me go ahead and just click on the camera here. And my eyes are kind of moving up and down because I didn't really set my rest pose or anything. But you can see already that we're not having any issue like we were before with that eye kind of glitching and going up and down. And that's because we assigned the eyeball properly to that outline of the eye versus the eyeball. And if we turn on the audio, we should see now our character talking because we now have those phonemes assigned, or the visemes, I should say, assigned for the character. And there you go. That's all you would have to do. Again, my character's gaze is a little bit off. If I come over here and set the rest pose, you can see now things are looking better. I can control my eyebrows. That's looking good. And just by default, we have a lot of things working here, except for my pupils. I think it's because my camera's at an angle, but I think it's working okay. And we can look at that more as we continue. And I might actually adjust my camera and reposition the desk just so I can get a better view. But anyway, as you can see, just by applying those tags, we were able to make the character work much better just by making those changes. So I'll pause the video here, and up next, we'll keep working on this rig. For this video, we are working off of 09 CAD Character Animator. Feel free to open up this file. What I want to do now is assign some pins to my character. So first, let's jump over back to the record panel. And it's just going to prepare here. Now, if I go through and I start to move around, you'll see that the character is doing some kind of crazy things. The body's bending at a really weird angle, and it just doesn't look that grounded. So what I want to do is come in and play with this so that we can ground the character, make sure that the feet are planted on the ground, so that way when he bends, he's bending from the feet or from another portion of the body. So let's come back here to rig really quick. And if we come down here to the bottom toolbar, you'll find we have some different handle tools, as they're called. We have the handle tool itself, the stick tool, the pin tool, the dragger tool, and then the dangle tool. We want to locate the pin tool first, so I'll click on that. Now, I want to click on the CAD layer. Where you apply handles will depend on how they are affected. So, if I apply pins to the entire CAD layer, the entire CAD layer will be affected by this anchor point. If I apply it to my legs, right now it will react the same because the legs are not independent, meaning anything that goes on with the main layer will also affect the legs. And right now I want that to happen because I have no plan to move the legs until later on. So by clicking on the CAD layer, I'm just going to come down here, zoom in a little bit on the feet, just by holding an Alt and using my mouse wheel. I'm going to assign 3 pins to each foot. So there's 1, 2, and then 3. And then 1, 2, 3. Now, I'm going to simply jump back over here to record and see how this looks. So we have the scene preparing. Just give it a moment here. And then if we start to bend, you'll see that the character is now bending from those feet. We can go back and forth, and it looks like he is anchored in much more than he was before. Now, of course, we still have some issues going on with how everything is moving here. And my camera, of course, is still not quite right because I'm looking down. Every time I look up, my character looks up because I'm looking at the monitor, and that's how that's working. But everything else in terms of movement is starting to look a little bit better just by placing those anchors. And you could keep doing this if you wanted to. We could come back here to the CAD layer once again. Come up here and I could apply a pin to the head. And then we could also apply a pin to the arm. So now if I come back here to record, we're going to see this update here first. Can take a moment depending on. And now if I start to move, you can see that those areas are locked. The head is kind of going back and forth in a weird warp motion because the top of the head is linked and it can't go anywhere. So it goes just beyond the feet. You can apply this to anywhere you feel you need to have something stick. Let's say you have a character reaching for an item on the table and they pull back and you want to have that squash and stretch effect. You could for a moment have that pin there and the rest of the body goes back, but the pin keeps the hand from moving. So those are just some things you could do. And again, you can play around with this on your own time. As for what we're going to do for now, I'm just going to come back here to those pins, and you can remove pins easily just by clicking on them and then hitting delete. I just want to keep the pins for the feet. I can hold in spacebar and click and drag to move around on this as well when zoomed in. And we're just going to come up here to the head and remove that fixed pin as well. So that way we are just locked to the feet. So that is how you can anchor and place pins inside of Character Animator. I'm back inside of Character Animator working off of 10 CAD Character Animator. We now want to add some dragger handles to this rig. And dragger handles are essentially how they sound. You can place hot points on the rig that can be dragged using your mouse. So you could use this to move arms or different body parts or props or whatever you want. First, make sure you're on the rig tab. And I want to come over and let's start by clicking on the CAD layer because that's where we assigned our pins, you'll remember. Now I want to come down and click on the dragger tool. And let's say we want to drag the arms so we can control them. I can add a dragger point to the back arm and then the front arm. Once we do that, we can come over here to record. And now the scene has popped back in. Let me just reset my pose really quick. There we go. And as you can see now, if I were to come in and start just moving this around, it's not going to really look all that good. You can see that it's pulling and it's dragging, but it's doing some weird stuff. And it's not quite working the way we want, because that's not how arms should bend. And it's simply how we have everything set up within the rig. So let's go back here and take a look at what we can do to correct this. So first, let's come down here, and I'm going to click on these draggable handles and remove them from the main Chad layer. I'm going to place these on their own individual layers. So let's go down here to body, and where we have front arm, I'm simply going to click on that layer and then click on the hand to insert a dragger. Then we'll come over here to the back arm and do the same thing. Now, let's go to record. And we'll see how this looks. I'm going to turn off my camera here for a moment and my audio, just so hopefully it plays a little bit quicker. My computer's experiencing some slowdown. And now if I click and drag, you're going to see it doesn't really do anything different. So even when we go in and isolate those things, it's still not quite right. So what can we do? Well, this is where independent layers come in play. An independent layer basically isolates that layer from the entire rig. So that way, you're not influencing the body when you move the arm. Let me come over here and turn on the crown for back arm as well as front arm, because that's going to create independence now. Come back here and hit record, and we can see what this looks like. So now, if I click and drag, you can see it's doing something different, but it's still not quite working the way we want. Maybe there's a little bit there, but it's simply not enough. So now if we come back here to rig, what else could we do to help this? Well, when it comes to rotating objects, in this case an arm, it's best to establish the pivot point from where you want it to rotate. As you can see when I have back arm selected, because this is tagged, you'll see we have this origin point right here. And this allows us to place the origin and have it hinge from a certain point. If I click and drag on it, I can bring it up, and we're going to get a colored interface with our character. You can see when I am on the arm, it's yellow, but when I pass over the body or anything else, it turns green. What this means is, if we bring it up here to the shoulder and it's green, we're going to attach this independent layer to the body at the shoulder. So once I release, we have now stapled this independent arm to the shoulder. Now let me come back here and record again. Let's take a moment here to repair the scene. And then if I click and drag, you can see it's starting to act a little bit better now. It's still not 100% perfect, but we're getting closer to where we want it. So what's still wrong? Well, let's come back here and click on the back arm. You'll see on the layer properties, we have attached to, and it says auto, and that's because it's automatically attaching to the body. It's independent, but the attach style is currently set to weld. Let's go ahead and change that to hinge. Now, if we come back and hit record, and click and drag, you can see it's acting much more naturally. Now, it's still not perfect. It's not really bending the way we want, but it's getting closer. So let me come back here and repeat that process for the other arm. I'll just click on front arm, and I want to grab that origin point and bring it up and attach it to the shoulder, just like that. And making sure we're still in that front arm layer. Come over here to the properties and change it to hinge. Now go to record. And once it prepares, we can test this out again. Once again, this arm's doing that. And this arm is doing this now. Again, it's a little bit more natural, but it's still not quite right. But we're getting there. So what we're going to do is pause the video, and up next, we'll keep refining these bends by rotating limbs and adding in sticks. For this video, I'm working off of 11 CAD Character Animator. Feel free to open up this file. We now want to experiment with how the arms are bending. I'm currently in the record panel, and if I come down and bend my arms, you can see that it's doing this. And it looks okay, but it's not 100% there yet. So we can come in here and play with this and see how it's looking. So let's come back here to the rig. What could we do to enhance this a little bit more? Well, let's try rotating the limbs. I know that sounds kind of weird, but it actually helps. So we'll start with the front arm first. And I'm just going to click on the front arm and come in and rotate this so that we are at about 26 degrees. And then I'm going to hit V on my keyboard to bring up the selection tool. And then I'm just going to move it back into place like so. Now, we want to make sure we get this lined up. If I zoom in here, you can see that we have this shading, and we want the arm to match that as close as possible. So I'm going to grab the front arm once again, and I'm just going to move it a little bit over like that. And I can click off to see what it looks like. And perhaps just back a little bit more, and then we should be okay. So probably something like that. Okay, that's close, and that should work. So we have that now set. And we're going to do the same for the back arm. I will expand the back arm first, and then click on the back hands. I just want to come in with the selection tool again, and click and drag and just move the back hands up so that they are closer into the sleeve. Then I will click on the back arm and we will rotate it 26 degrees in the other way. So we're at that angle. And then I can click and drag and just bring this over. And again, you want it to attach to the body. So you can bring it over like that. About there should be good. And then you can release. Now, the other thing that can adjust how the arms bend are where the draggable handles are, but also where the origin point is. So if I click and drag on this origin point, I'm just going to situate it so that it's closer to the left side. And I'll do the same for the draggable point as well. And I'll click on the front arm and do the same. I'm just going to move this draggable point down a little bit like that. And then the draggable hand point can come over like so. So now if we go and record this, just give it a moment. And I come down here and click and drag. You can see things are starting to look better. We have a slight issue with the shoulder here. It just sort of pops out a little bit. So let's just pop back here to the rig really quick. And I might have moved that origin point a little bit too far. I can just click and drag and maybe move it back like so. And maybe even come down and just move the arm back a little bit more like that. Now I can record. Try it one more time. Click and drag. And that's looking a little bit better. There is a small piece here where the arm intersects with the collar. We could actually create a separate piece for that collar and overlay it. So that's something we might do as well. But for now, I think this should be okay. We'll pause here. And up next, we'll move on to using the stick tool. For this video, I'm working off of 12 CAD Character Animator. Feel free to open up this file. What I want to do now is experiment with the stick tool. If I come back here and hit record, we can see what the animation currently looks like. So if I click and drag on the arms, we can see how they bend and how they currently move around. And it has this nice sort of springy, cartoony look, and that's fine. If you want that, that's awesome. But if you're looking to refine the bends a little bit more, let's come back here to the rig. And starting with front arm, I'm going to come down here and click on the stick tool. Now, I can come up and starting at the top point, I can click and drag and just move down to about the center of the arm and release. Move down just a little bit and then click and drag to come down to the hand to finish. And that's all you need to do. So 2 sticks, a little space in between, kind of where you think the elbow might be, and then finish off. So now if we go to record, and we click and drag, you can see now that the arm has a much more definite bend to it. It's easy to see where that bend takes place and how it's controlled. So let's come back here and we can do the same now for the back arm. Come over here to your back arm, grab the stick tool, and just come in and you're just going to place your 2 sticks down with a space in between. Then go back here to record just to check it out. Click and drag, and you can see now that we have that bend in place. And it's looking good. So again, if you're looking to add some definition to your bends, such as a limb for an elbow or anything to that nature, be sure to check out the stick tool inside of Character Animator. For this video, I'm working off of 13 CAD Character Animator. Feel free to open up this file. We're now going to talk about danglers, which allow us to add a dangle physic to the rig. A great way to demonstrate this is to apply it to the hair. So whenever the head moves, you have some residual animation as the hair reacts to that movement. So in order to do this, the first thing you need to do if you want something to dangle is to make sure that it is its own independent layer. You can see right here we have the hair. We also need this to be in its own group, otherwise this will not work. And we'll also need the back hair to be in its own group as well. So we're going to go back into Photoshop and make that correction. So here we are looking at that rig. I'm just going to come over here to my layers, and where we have back hair and front hair, I'm just going to create 2 group layers, just like this. I'll name the first one back hair 1, and then the second one will be back hair 2. We can put this one into there and that one into there. And we'll make sure that 2 is underneath 1. There we go. Then you want to do the same for the front hair. I'll come in, create a group. I'll just name it front hair, and then I can drop it into that group. Now, if I were to save this file, it would auto-sync inside of Character Animator. But since I'm doing a tutorial and I want to give you every step possible so you can dissect it, I'm just going to save as, so I can create a new file. And I'm going to come in here and rename it to 14 CAD hair grouped. That way we know what it is. And then I can hit save and then OK. So we now have a new document ready to go. I'm going to go back here to Character Animator. And again, if I were doing this in real life, so to speak, I would just save the file and update the reference. But let's come over here so that way you can see how this works too. I'm going to click on the puppet inside my project panel, and you'll see we have the puppet source located right here. I'm just going to click once on the source, locate 14 Chad hair grouped, and then replace it. What's great about this is it will retain all the changes you've made to the rig, but it's just going to update what you made changes to inside of this new Photoshop document. So you can see, if we come back here to the Chad group, that all of my fixed points are still there. If I go to the front arm, I have my sticks and my draggable points still there. The only thing that's changed now is you'll see that back hair 1 and 2 are grouped, as well as front hair. So with those grouped now, I can turn on independence for all of them. So now with them independent, and I'll start with the front hair, I want to take this group and make sure I'm on this selection tool and find its origin point, and I want to attach it to the head. So you can see it's right here. We're just going to come in and I'll attach it right about here, should be fine. Now I can come down and select the Dangle tool, and I'm just going to come in and place down areas that I want to dangle. So these 2 pieces for sure. And we could do one up here if we wish, but I think I'll just do these 2 pieces and see how it goes. Now I'm going to do the back hair. So I'll come down here to back hair 1. Using the selection tool, just bring in your origin point and make sure it's attached to the head. And then grab the Dangle tool. And I'm just going to come in and add some dangle handles to this clump of hair. We'll do like 3 in this area, like that. Then go over here to back hair 2, and you're just going to repeat the process. Make sure once again that you have this assigned to the head. Then you want your Dangle tool to come in, and we're just going to apply these dangle points just like that. So now, just to note, as I'm doing this, you'll see that each of these back hairs have a 3 next to them, next to handles. And I didn't mention this before, but as I add any handles, you'll see that that number updates in real time, showing you exactly what you have going on in each layer. So now, once we have that set, we can jump over here to record. Now you're not going to see much until we start adding some movement. So I'm just going to enable my camera here, and I'm just going to move my hair back and forth, or head, I should say. And as you can see this, the hair is actually moving in real time. We're going back and forth, and you can see that there's a slight dangle to it that's occurring, which is really cool. Now again, you could do this more drastically, and we're going to look at how you can make those changes as you go. But for now, I think this is going to work for our purposes. And hopefully you understand that you can easily make any part of your character dangle. For instance, we could make the eyes dangle if we wanted to. You just have to assign that handle and make sure that they're independent. And make sure it's attached to the area you want it to dangle from. But ultimately, it's pretty easy to set up.
You made it to the end. That's awesome. I hope you had fun and learned something. If you want to learn more, or perhaps you jumped into the middle and need to backtrack to previous lessons, you can always check out the playlist for this course. Also, if you need help and want to go further, the course files are always available on Udemy. Plus, we have the updated version of this course available on there as well. All of that is detailed in the description box below. Thanks for watching.